My name is Rosalind, and at 62 years old, I thought I understood what family meant. I had spent 17 years as a single mother after my husband died, when my son Marcus was just 12. 3 jobs, sleepless nights, and every sacrifice imaginable to give him the life he deserved. Now sitting in my car outside the Meridian, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, I clutched the elegant anniversary invitation in my trembling hands. Marcus and Stephanie's 5th wedding anniversary. My heart swelled with pride and anticipation for what I believed would be an intimate family celebration. I had no idea that this Saturday evening would shatter everything I believed about the son I had raised and the daughter-in-law I had tried so hard to love. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about family. Trust me, you won't believe how this night changed everything I thought I knew about unconditional love. Let me take you back to understand how I ended up in this situation. When my husband David passed away from a sudden heart attack, I was left with a 12-year-old boy and a mountain of grief. But Marcus was my world, my reason to keep going. I worked as a night shift nurse, tutored high school students on weekends, and cleaned office buildings before dawn. Every penny I earned went toward his education, his dreams, his future. Marcus was brilliant. He graduated valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Columbia, and later completed his PhD in economics. I was so proud I could barely contain myself. Throughout his 20s, we talked every day. He would call me from grad school just to share his thoughts about his research or ask for advice about life decisions. We were best friends, or so I thought. Everything changed when he met Stephanie Walker during his final year of graduate school. She was everything I was not. Born into wealth, polished, educated at the finest private schools, and destined for a corner office at a prestigious law firm. Her father owned a chain of luxury hotels, and her mother sat on the boards of 3 major charities. Stephanie was beautiful, ambitious, and unfortunately she seemed to view me as an embarrassment to her carefully curated life. The wedding 5 years ago was the first sign of trouble. I was relegated to a back table with distant relatives I had never met, while Stephanie's sorority sisters and law school friends surrounded the main tables. When I mentioned this to Marcus, he assured me it was just venue limitations. I wanted to believe him. After their marriage, the calls became less frequent. Marcus's explanations were always reasonable. He was building his career. They were traveling for Stephanie's work. They were house hunting. But I felt the distance growing, like a chasm I couldn't cross. What I didn't understand then was how completely I was being manipulated. 3 years into their marriage, Marcus called with devastating news. Despite his PhD and Stephanie's law degree, they were struggling financially. The student loans were overwhelming, and they had found their dream house but couldn't qualify for the mortgage alone. Could I help them just temporarily until their careers stabilized? How could I say no to my only child? I had been smart with my money, investing carefully and living modestly. I had enough saved for a comfortable retirement, and if helping Marcus meant securing his happiness, it was worth every penny. I co-signed for their $800,000 mortgage in an upscale neighborhood where houses looked like small mansions. I agreed to cover the monthly payments of $4,500 until they could refinance in their names. Then came Stephanie's MBA program, $50,000 per year for 2 years, because as Marcus explained, her increased earning potential would benefit their entire future. Month after month, I transferred $3,000 for their living expenses, groceries, utilities, car payments, insurance. Marcus always promised it was temporary, just until the next promotion, the next bonus, the next opportunity. And I believed him because he was my son, and mothers believe their children, even when logic whispers otherwise. The invitation to their 5th anniversary celebration arrived on thick cream-colored paper with gold embossing. It was addressed to me personally, written in elegant calligraphy. The location was the Meridian, the same restaurant where Fortune 500 CEOs entertained clients and where a single dinner could cost more than most people made in a week. I spent weeks preparing for this evening. I bought a new navy blue dress from Nordstrom, made an appointment at the salon for the first time in years, and carefully selected their anniversary gift. A Rolex watch for Marcus, identical to the one his father wore, costing $15,000. It seemed appropriate for such a milestone celebration. The Meridian rose before me like a temple of luxury, its marble facade gleaming under warm spotlights. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms moved efficiently between arriving vehicles, each car more expensive than the last. My modest Honda looked painfully out of place among the BMWs and Mercedes, but I reminded myself that I belonged here. This was my son's celebration, and I was his mother. The hostess, a young woman with perfect posture and a practiced smile, checked her reservation list twice when I mentioned the Anderson anniversary party. Her brow furrowed slightly, and she made a quick phone call before leading me through the restaurant's main dining room. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows on white tablecloths, while soft piano music created an atmosphere of refined elegance. We walked past the main dining area toward a private room at the restaurant's rear. Through frosted glass doors, I could see the warm glow of candles and the silhouettes of gathered guests. My heart raced with anticipation. This was going to be such a special evening. The hostess opened the doors, and I stepped into a scene that took my breath away. The private dining room was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Dozens of red roses, arranged in tall crystal vases, adorned every surface. Soft candlelight flickered from elegant centerpieces, while string lights twinkled overhead like stars. Round tables draped in ivory linens surrounded a small dance floor, where a jazz trio played softly in the corner. But as my eyes adjusted to the room, confusion began to replace wonder. This was not the intimate family gathering I had expected. 40, maybe 50 people filled the space, all engaged in animated conversation, while servers moved between them, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I recognized no one. These were young professionals, impeccably dressed and confident in their element. The women wore designer cocktail dresses and statement jewelry, while the men sported tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. This was Stephanie's world, not mine. I spotted Marcus across the room, and my heart leapt. He looked so handsome in his black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. He was engaged in conversation with a group of colleagues, gesturing enthusiastically about something that made them all laugh. This was my son, my pride and joy in his element. But when our eyes met across the crowded room, his expression changed instantly. The smile faded, replaced by something I had never seen before. Fear. Panic. He looked at me as if I were a ghost, an unwelcome apparition that threatened to shatter his carefully constructed evening. I made my way towards him, weaving between groups of guests who glanced at me with polite curiosity. Their conversations paused momentarily as I passed, and I felt increasingly self-conscious about my department store dress and modest jewelry in this room full of luxury and sophistication. Marcus reached me first. His face flushed and his voice strained. "Mom, what? What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. This was his anniversary party. Wasn't it I was his mother? Where else would I be? Before I could respond, Stephanie appeared beside him like a crimson flame. Her red designer dress hugged her perfect figure, while diamond earrings caught the candlelight with every movement. She looked absolutely stunning and absolutely furious. Her green eyes, usually so carefully controlled, flashed with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Was it anger, embarrassment, fear? She looked at me as if I had committed some terrible social transgression by simply existing in her space. The conversation around us began to quiet as other guests sensed tension in the air. I felt dozens of eyes turning toward our small group, and my cheeks burned with the beginning of humiliation I didn't yet understand. Stephanie stepped closer, her voice low but razor sharp. "Rosalind, I think there's been a misunderstanding." Her tone was perfectly polite, the kind of controlled courtesy that wealthy people used when addressing service staff. It was condescending and dismissive. designed to make me feel small without crossing the line into outright rudeness. I fumbled in my purse and retrieved the invitation, my hands shaking slightly. I received this invitation. It has our address on it, and it's clearly for your anniversary celebration. I held the elegant card toward her, hoping it would clear up whatever confusion existed. Stephanie took the invitation with 2 fingers, as if it might contaminate her perfectly manicured hands. Her face flushed red as she examined it, and she whirled toward Marcus with barely contained fury. "Did you send this?" she hissed through gritted teeth. Marcus looked like a deer caught in headlights. His eyes darted between his wife and his mother, beads of perspiration forming on his forehead, despite the room's comfortable temperature. I thought maybe we should include her this time. She's been so supportive and we talked about this. Stephanie interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. Tonight is for our professional network, our colleagues, our future business contacts. This is about building our careers, not playing happy family. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Playing happy family. I was his family. I was the woman who had raised him, sacrificed for him, loved him unconditionally for 37 years. How had I become someone to be hidden away, someone whose presence was an inconvenience? I tried to maintain my composure, forcing a smile I hoped looked more confident than I felt. I understand this is primarily a professional event, but surely there's room for family too. I can just sit quietly somewhere in the back. I brought a gift for Marcus, and I'd love to celebrate this milestone with you both. Stephanie's laugh was sharp and humorless. That won't be possible. This is a carefully curated guest list, and everyone here has been invited for specific reasons. Our law firm partners, Marcus's research colleagues, potential investors in our future ventures. Adding family members would change the entire dynamic of the evening. I looked to Marcus silently, pleading for him to defend me, to explain that his mother deserved a place at his celebration. But he stood frozen, his jaw working soundlessly as he struggled with some internal battle I couldn't comprehend. The son who used to tell me everything, who used to value my opinion above all others, couldn't even meet my eyes. Other guests had definitely noticed our conversation now. Conversations around us grew quieter, as people tried to eavesdrop without appearing obvious. I could feel their curious stares, their whispered speculations about the older woman, who clearly didn't belong among their sophisticated crowd. "Perhaps you could celebrate with Marcus another time," Stephanie continued, her voice growing more firm. "Privately, just the 2 of you. Tonight really isn't appropriate for family members." The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman whose MBA tuition I was paying, who lived in a house I was financing, was telling me I wasn't appropriate for her celebration. But I still didn't fully understand the depth of their deception or the extent to which I had been used. "Marcus," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "please tell me you want me here. Tell me this invitation wasn't some kind of mistake." He opened his mouth, closed it again, and looked down at his expensive shoes. In that moment of silence, I felt something fundamental break inside my chest. This wasn't confusion or poor planning. This was deliberate exclusion, and my own son was too cowardly to either defend me or be honest about his feelings. I could feel the weight of 40 pairs of eyes on me as the reality of my situation became crystal clear. This wasn't just about tonight's party. This was about how my son and daughter-in-law truly viewed me in their carefully crafted life. I was an embarrassment to be managed, not a family member to be celebrated. "Marcus," I said, my voice growing stronger despite my breaking heart, "I need you to explain something to me. I helped plan your entire life since your father died. I worked 3 jobs to pay for your education. I've been supporting you financially for years because you told me you needed help. And now you're telling me I don't belong at your anniversary celebration." Several guests had stopped pretending to have other conversations and were openly staring now. The jazz trio continued playing, but their music felt hollow against the tension that filled the room like thick smoke. Stephanie's face went pale as I mentioned financial support. She grabbed Marcus's arm with enough force to leave marks. What support? What is she talking about? For the first time all evening, I saw genuine shock in her expression. She genuinely didn't know. Marcus had been lying to both of us, taking my money while telling his wife they were financially independent. The web of deception was more complex than I had imagined. "You didn't tell her about the mortgage payments?" I asked Marcus, watching his face crumble. "The MBA tuition. The $3,000 I transfer every month for your living expenses." Stephanie's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. Servers rushed to clean the mess while she stared at her husband with a mixture of fury and humiliation that mirrored my own emotions. "You've been lying to me," she whispered, her carefully controlled facade finally cracking. "All this time when you said we were building our independence, your mother has been paying for everything." The revelation hung in the air, like poison. Other guests were no longer pretending politeness. They watched our family drama unfold with the fascination people reserve for car accidents and reality television. I could hear whispered comments and see phones being discreetly raised to record the spectacle. Marcus tried to speak, but Stephanie cut him off with a sharp gesture. Her embarrassment was palpable, and in that moment I almost felt sorry for her. She had believed she was married to a successful independent man only to discover he was financially dependent on his elderly mother. But her next words destroyed any sympathy I might have felt. "This is completely unacceptable," she announced loud enough for half the room to hear. "You're disrupting our celebration and embarrassing us in front of our colleagues and friends. I'm calling security." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Security. She was having me removed from my own son's party, like I was some kind of dangerous intruder. The humiliation was so complete, so devastating, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. "Please," I whispered, making one last desperate appeal to the woman I had helped financially for years. I just wanted to celebrate my son's happiness. I brought him a gift. I've been looking forward to this evening for weeks. But Stephanie had already signaled to a server, who disappeared quickly through a side door. Within minutes, 2 large men in black suits appeared at our table. Security guards with serious faces and practiced efficiency. "Ma'am," the taller guard said with professional courtesy, "you need to leave the premises." I looked one final time at Marcus, praying he would find his voice, would stand up for the woman who had given him everything. But he stood silent as a statue, his eyes fixed on the floor, while his mother was escorted out like a common criminal. The walk to the exit felt endless. 40 pairs of eyes tracked my progress as I moved between tables of strangers who would remember this as the evening's entertainment. Behind me, I could hear Stephanie already beginning damage control, her voice, bright and false, as she tried to refocus attention on the celebration. The security guards were professional but firm, walking beside me until I reached the valet stand. They waited while the attendant retrieved my car, ensuring I couldn't change my mind and attempt to return. As I drove away from the Meridian, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I caught one last glimpse of the party through the restaurant's windows. The celebration continued without missing a beat. Marcus and Stephanie were already back to entertaining their guests, toasting their anniversary as if nothing had happened. In that moment, I realized that to them, I truly was nothing. I was a financial resource to be managed discreetly, not a family member to be loved and respected. I drove home through blurred vision tears, making the streetlights look like watercolor smears against the darkness. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and twice I had to pull over because I couldn't see clearly enough to drive safely. The humiliation burned in my chest like acid, but underneath it, something else was growing. Something harder and more dangerous than grief. My house felt empty and cold when I finally arrived. I sat in my living room surrounded by framed photographs of Marcus at every stage of his life. His first day of school graduation from high school, college commencement, wedding day. In every picture, I stood beside him beaming with pride at my incredible son, who could do no wrong. Now those same photographs felt like evidence of my own foolishness. I opened my laptop and began pulling up financial records. Bank statements, mortgage payments, tuition receipts, monthly transfers. The numbers told a story I had refused to see clearly until tonight. In 5 years of marriage, I had given Marcus and Stephanie $750,000, $750,000 to people who considered my presence at their anniversary party an embarrassment. But the deeper I dug into their finances, the more sickening the truth became. A quick search of Marcus's LinkedIn profile revealed that he had been promoted to senior financial analyst 18 months ago. His salary was listed in a recent industry publication as being in the six-figure range. Far from struggling, he was quite successful. Stephanie's law firm website featured her prominently as one of their rising stars, with biographical information that mentioned her successful defense of several high-profile corporate cases. Her billable hours alone probably exceeded what most families lived on for an entire year. They didn't need my money, they never had. I spent hours researching the life they had built while crying poverty to me. Their social media accounts, which I had rarely checked, told the real story. Photos from expensive vacations I hadn't known they could afford. Stephanie wearing jewelry that cost more than my car. Marcus at charity galas and country club events, looking perfectly at home among the wealthy elite. While I had been eating store-brand groceries and postponing my own home repairs to help them financially, they had been living a lifestyle that most people could only dream about. And worst of all, they had been lying to me about every single bit of it. Dawn was breaking outside my kitchen window when I finally closed the laptop. I had cried myself empty during the long night, but something had crystallized in those dark hours. I was done being their secret benefactor. I was done being the embarrassing mother who had to be hidden away. If Marcus and Stephanie wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then they were about to discover what that really meant. I made coffee with hands that no longer shook and began making a list. Every financial connection between us, every automatic payment, every account where my name appeared alongside theirs. By the time most people were waking up for work, I had documented the complete financial relationship that was about to end forever. At exactly 9 a.m., I dialed the number for my bank. "Good morning, this is Rosalind Patterson. I need to cancel all automatic payments from my account to Marcus and Stephanie Anderson effective immediately." The customer service representative was efficient and helpful. Within 20 minutes, I had stopped the mortgage payment that was scheduled to process that afternoon, cancelled the automatic transfer for Stephanie's spring semester MBA tuition, and removed my authorization for their monthly living expense allowance. Next, I called my financial advisor, a woman who had helped me plan for retirement and had questioned my large monthly expenses to my son's family. "Margaret, I need to withdraw my name from all shared accounts with Marcus Anderson and remove him as beneficiary on my life insurance policies." Margaret had been expecting this call. "Rosalind, I'm proud of you. What finally opened your eyes?" I told her about the previous evening, and she listened without judgment. By noon, I had appointments scheduled to update my will, remove myself from the house deed, and cancel the comprehensive insurance policies I had been paying for Marcus's expensive cars. The phone rang for the first time at 2:30 that afternoon. "Mom, there's been some kind of mistake with the mortgage payment. The bank called and said there was insufficient funds. Can you check your account?" Marcus's voice sounded strained, but not yet panicked. He clearly believed this was just a banking error that could be easily resolved. "No mistake, son," I replied, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I stopped all payments to you and Stephanie this morning. I'm done being your silent ATM." The silence on the other end stretched so long, I wondered if the call had been disconnected. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was high and tight with disbelief. "What do you mean you stopped the payments? You can't just do that. We have commitments, obligations. The mortgage payment is due today. Then you'll need to handle it yourself," I said, like the successful independent adults you pretended to be last night. I explained what I had discovered about their real financial situation, their lies about struggling to make ends meet, their deliberate deception about needing my help. With each revelation, Marcus grew quieter until he was barely speaking at all. "Mom, I know last night didn't go well, but you can't punish us financially because of one misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Marcus, your wife, called security to have me removed from your anniversary party. You stood there and said nothing while I was humiliated in front of 50 strangers. That wasn't a misunderstanding. that was a deliberate choice to exclude and embarrass me. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Marcus alternating between anger pleading and attempts to minimize what had happened. But I had made my decision during the long, sleepless night, and nothing he said was going to change it. Stephanie took the phone during the final minutes of our conversation, her voice shaking with fury. "This is completely unreasonable. You can't destroy our financial stability because your feelings got hurt at a party." "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "I'm simply stopping my support for people who made it clear they don't want me in their lives. You wanted independence from the embarrassing mother-in-law. Congratulations, you have it." Throughout the week, the calls continued. First pleading, then angry, then desperate. I learned that their entire lifestyle had been built on my financial foundation. Without my support, they couldn't maintain the house complete Stephanie's degree or keep up with the social circle that was so important to their professional advancement. Friday evening, Marcus appeared at my front door. I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, well-dressed man from the anniversary party had been replaced by someone who looked haggard and desperate. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and his eyes had the wild look of someone facing financial ruin. "Mom, please, we're going to lose everything. Stephanie is having panic attacks. The mortgage company wants immediate payment plus penalties. Her school is threatening to drop her from the program. You can't let us fail because of one bad evening." I invited him inside, made coffee, and listened to his litany of financial disasters. Without my payments, their carefully constructed life was collapsing like a house of cards. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same son who couldn't acknowledge my existence at his party was now begging for my help. "I have a proposal," I told him when he finished explaining their desperate situation. "Apologize publicly. Call everyone who was at that party and explain that you treated your mother badly. Admit that I've been supporting you financially for years and that you were wrong to hide our relationship. Do that, pay back half of what I've given you over the past 5 years, and I'll consider resuming some level of support." Marcus stared at me as if I had suggested he donate a kidney to charity. "I can't do that. It would ruin our reputation, our professional relationships. People would think we're failures who can't manage our own lives." "Then I guess you'll have to figure out how to manage your lives without me," I replied, walking him to the door. 6 months later, I watched from my front window as the moving truck pulled away from Marcus and Stephanie's foreclosed house. They had managed to find a small apartment across town, trading their 4-bedroom dream home for a 1-bedroom reality check. The luxury cars had been sold, replaced by a single-use sedan that they shared for work commutes. Stephanie never finished her MBA. Without my tuition payments, she couldn't afford to continue, and their new financial reality made student loans impossible to obtain. The stress of their situation had taken a visible toll on their marriage. Through mutual friends, I heard about the constant arguments, the blame game that dominated their conversations, and Stephanie's growing resentment toward Marcus for the lies that had led to their downfall. But my own life had transformed in ways I never expected. The money I had been sending to Marcus every month was now funding adventures I had postponed for decades. I booked a trip to Europe, something I had dreamed about since I was young but never felt I could afford. The $3,000 that used to disappear into their account now paid for cooking classes, theater subscriptions, and weekend trips to places I had always wanted to see. I joined a book club at the local library and discovered that I enjoyed the company of people my own age who shared my interests. For years I had been so focused on supporting Marcus that I had forgotten to build my own social connections. Now at 63, I was making friends and creating relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The biggest surprise came when I met William Chen, a recently retired high school teacher whose wife had passed away 2 years earlier. We met at a volunteer orientation for a literacy program, and our friendship developed slowly into something deeper. William treated me with the kindness and consideration I had forgotten I deserved. He listened to my stories, valued my opinions, and never once made me feel like I needed to apologize for existing. 8 months after the anniversary party disaster, Marcus called me. His voice was different now, humbler, with none of the entitled expectation that had characterized our previous conversations. "Mom, I owe you an apology. Not just for that night, but for years of taking advantage of your love and generosity. I've been in therapy trying to understand how I became someone who could treat his mother so badly." We met for coffee at a small cafe near my house. Marcus looked older, more mature somehow. The financial pressure had stripped away the artifice of his previous life, leaving someone who seemed more like the son I remembered from his younger years. "Stephanie and I are getting divorced," he told me quietly. "The stress of everything, the lies I told both of you, the financial mess. She blames me for ruining her life, and honestly, she's not wrong. I destroyed both of our relationships with my selfishness and dishonesty." He apologized again this time, with tears in his eyes, for the humiliation he had allowed me to suffer. He explained how Stephanie had pressured him to keep our family separate from their professional life, and how he had convinced himself that hiding our relationship was temporary, just until they were more established in their careers. "I knew it was wrong," he admitted. "Every time I lied about where the money was coming from, every time I made excuses for why you couldn't meet my colleagues, every time I let Stephanie talk about you, like you were some embarrassing relative, instead of the woman who raised me alone and gave me everything I achieved. I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway." I listened to his apology and felt something shift inside my chest. The anger that had sustained me through months of no contact began to fade, replaced by something that felt like relief. Not forgiveness yet, but the possibility of it. "I don't want your money anymore," Marcus continued. "I'm working 2 jobs now, trying to rebuild my life on a foundation that's actually mine. I want to earn back your respect, and hopefully someday, your trust." We began meeting regularly after that. Coffee once a week, then dinner occasionally. Our relationship was different now, built on honesty, rather than financial obligation. Marcus had learned to support himself, and found that he was stronger than he had believed possible. The experience of losing everything had forced him to discover who he really was underneath the entitled exterior he had cultivated. A year after that terrible anniversary evening, Marcus helped me move some furniture in preparation for William's moving in with me. As we worked together, he paused to look at the photos on my mantelpiece. "Mom, I want you to know something. That night when security was escorting you out, and I just stood there like a coward, that was the moment I lost respect for myself. I've spent every day since then trying to become someone worthy of being your son again." I set down the box I was carrying and really looked at my son. The entitled, deceptive man who had used my love as an ATM was gone. In his place stood someone who had learned that character matters more than appearance, that integrity is worth more than social status, and that family relationships built on honesty last longer than those built on financial convenience. "You know what I learned through all of this?" I asked him. "Love doesn't mean being a doormat. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. I spent so many years protecting you from failure that I forgot to teach you how to succeed on your own." That evening, as William and I cooked dinner together, while Marcus assembled a bookshelf in the living room, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The humiliation at the Meridian had been devastating, but it had also been necessary. Without that wake-up call, I might have spent the rest of my life being used by people who claimed to love me while treating me as an embarrassment. I learned that self-respect isn't selfish. At 62, I finally put myself first, and it saved what was left of my relationship with my son. More importantly, it taught him that love requires respect, and that family means honoring the people who sacrifice for you, not hiding them away when they become inconvenient. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself, and sometimes, just sometimes, they find their way back to you, humbled and grateful for the lesson they never knew they needed to learn. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to cut off financial support to family members who were taking advantage of your generosity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding your self-worth. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story. and remember that you deserve to be treated with respect by the people you love. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.